let's talk about how vegans kill more animals than non-vegans do.
I eat bread, yes.
Right, you're aware that in the process of wheat manufacture and bread making, that literally billions of insects get murdered. I mean, these are sacred animals that have been murdered so you can eat bread. It doesn't matter what size they are. A little insect that you're having murdered, well, they get murdered. You ask any farmer who produces wheat and then involved in bread manufacturing, billions of insects get murdered. And vegans never mention them. They munch their bread, they eat their toast, they love their baguettes, whilst abusing people like me that eat steak. But you don't care about the little guys, do you?
So apparently, vegans kill lots of mice, other rodents, insects, and bugs due to plant harvesting because vegans don't consume animal products. This is kind of ironic because I would say that this is more of an argument for veganism rather than against veganism. So here's the deal. I was about to say sitch, but that's not the theme of today's video. But here's the deal. It takes 6 pounds of plant protein to produce 1 pound of animal protein. This really sucks, but 90% of Amazon rainforests are being destructed due to animal agriculture. It has that much of a negative effect just on our rainforests. So since plant harvesting is also part of animal agriculture, more plants are harvested, more land is required, and more animals, bugs, and insects are killed due to the consumption of animal products. And then on top of that, there's also cows, chickens, pigs, turkeys, and all those other animals that people consume the flesh and secretions of, getting their throats slit. Which, like I said in the beginning of this video, it takes 6 pounds of plant protein to produce just 1 pound of animal protein, meaning that we are kind of filtering those plants through the animal as opposed to going straight to the source, if that makes sense. And then if we were to go straight to the source, we could feed more people instead of feeding these animals that we breed to kill and consume their body parts. Let's talk about intentional harm versus unintentional harm. We all know that animals have to be used for what comes out of their bodies for products such as dairy and eggs. And we also know that their throats have to be slit for meat products. We intentionally, I know that's not something that we seek out when we buy these products. We're not trying to seek out evil, but unfortunately that is just the truth of what happens when we consume those products. And most likely you have a choice not to consume those products. I understand that they taste good. I understand that that's where you know to get your protein or calcium or whatever, but maybe, you know, you know, like I'm saying, you know, but maybe instead of grabbing the cow milk, you move your hand over a few inches and you grab the plant milk instead. Or when it comes to buying a new toothpaste, maybe get the vegan cruelty-free one instead of the one that tests on animals and also has pig fat in it. That's just a suggestion. I know that's gross, but that's in some toothpastes. I don't even know. I didn't make it. We do intentionally cause harm and death upon about 70 billion animals yearly when we consume animal products. Unfortunately, that is just something that we've been doing for years, even though most of us have the choice not to. But that means it's very much intentional. It's one thing if we were in a rural part of the world and we were uncivilized, but if you are watching this video, then you most likely are civilized if you're sitting here watching me, of all things that you could be doing. So that means that when we do consume animal products, we are intentionally causing harm. I'm talking to you guys. I'm not talking to those people that are actually surviving. We may be financially trying to survive, pay our bills, all that kind of stuff, but we're not surviving where we have to go hunt with our own bow and arrow that we built ourselves. We're struggling for food and we don't know where our next meal is gonna come from, literally. Like, we have no clue. We don't have grocery stores, all that kind of stuff. None of us are in that situation, and if you are, I suggest you not waste your time, your short amount of time on this earth watching me talk about this, because this is so irrelevant in your life. I know that you're not a bad person and you don't want to intentionally cause harm and death upon innocent, defenseless animals, but unfortunately that is what happens when we consume animal products. To put things into a different perspective, we are driving a car and we intentionally crash into another person. That was intentional harm. We knew what was gonna happen. We didn't accidentally cause an accident. We intentionally caused that accident. Well, it wasn't an accident, but we intentionally caused that car crash. That was intentional harm. When it could have been avoided, we could have chose not to intentionally do that. We could have chose to not turn someone else's who is innocent, their life upside down. It is immoral and unethical because we chose to intentionally cause harm and suffering and maybe even death. But if you were to get into a car crash unintentionally and it was a complete accident, you were driving safely, you were going to work or school and just trying to get through your day, have the best day possible, but unfortunately, you get into a car accident and it wasn't your fault. Maybe it wasn't even the other person's fault. It was just a complete accident. And with that situation, there would be no moral conflict because you weren't intentionally causing harm. It was completely unintentional. Same goes for plant harvesting for a vegan lifestyle versus animal agriculture for animal products. Animal agriculture not only requires a lot of plant harvesting to happen, whereas it takes less plant harvesting to happen for a vegan lifestyle or just a plant-based diet. And then on top of that, for animal agriculture, animals like cows, chickens, pigs, turkeys, all those animals that people consume the flesh and secretions of have to get their throats slit. Remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how many plants have to be harvested for just 1 pound of meat, which means even more plants have to be harvested, meaning that even more bugs, rodents, and insects have to be killed in the process. I mean, like I said, again, that is completely unintentional when it comes to plant harvesting, and also those mice and rodents and gophers may or may not even be in the fields. So that isn't necessarily the problem, but if you want to make that argument as a non-vegan, it just kind of is silly. And yeah, we all have to eat. It's not about not eating or being the most perfect pure that you can be. It's just about causing the least amount of harm that you possibly can in the situation that you've been given in life. We breed animals for the sole purpose of using them for their bodies, profiting off of them, and we planned their death date depending on when they're at their proper slaughter weight, which is what the industry refers to it as. Kind of disturbing if you ask me. That's when they're fattened up so much so that the people in the animal agriculture industry can make the most amount of money off of them. That is intentionally inflicting harm and death upon animals. Now I know you are not the one that's doing that. You're not the one that's doing the dirty work, but you're paying for it when you consume animal products. You are demanding for that to happen. You are funding that business and their practices. And remember, even if those businesses are loving to their animals, they use labels such as humane, free range, grass-fed, those animals are still being used for their bodies, and eventually their throats are going to be slit so that people can profit off of them. And do you think that humane and throats getting slit could go together? Or are those two polar opposites and no way could they correlate and collab? Worst collab of the year. But when it comes to harvesting plants for vegans, it's not intentional to cause suffering and death upon mice and bugs who may or may not be in the fields. And they haven't been artificially inseminated to be bred and then killed. Their organs haven't been cut out of them, and their bodily secretions haven't been sold and consumed. Just because we know that plant harvesting can cause some unintentional harm, does that justify inflicting intentional harm upon animals when we consume animal products? The definition of veganism is a way of living that seeks out to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purposes. Veganism is not something that makes you perfect. It's not about perfection. And once you go vegan, you don't get the certificate of purity because it's the moral baseline for us. It's the basics. It's not everything. You're just another person, and you just want to do the best that you can in the situation that you've been given. You want to do more, as Casey Neistat would say, and you don't want to inflict unnecessary harm and death upon animals, especially in a way that is so easy to avoid. I mean, of course, we still have to drive cars, we still have to use electricity, we still have to be civilized in order to be part of this culture that we live in and to be able to function. I think it's not that hard to move your hand just a few inches over to the plant milk and put that in your cart versus the cow milk that is for baby cows. And you may not even be vegan, but you're just making those vegan choices every now and then, or just switching your deodorant to a vegan cruelty-free deodorant or your foundation to a vegan cruelty-free foundation makes a difference, and you are voting with your dollar for more ethical options for things that don't have to have animal ingredients in them or have to be tested on animals. So it is making a difference, even though you may not be vegan right now. Just making those vegan choices instead of those other choices that aren't so cool, that the majority of us can agree, because the majority of us are all good people. We don't want to be supporting that. Even though we're not vegan, just don't support that stuff. You don't even have to call yourself vegan. Like, who cares?
Like, wow, I know you hear the sound. Yeah, I drink so much that I might drown.